I opened it expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor. Instead, a man stood there with heartbreak in his eyes and my wife's name on his lips. That was the day I found out I wasn't the only man in her life. That was the moment my entire world fell apart. What started as a perfect marriage turned into a twisted reality I never saw coming. Hey friends, before we dive in, thank you so much to all my amazing subscribers for your constant support. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss any of these raw, real, and dramatic life stories. Your support helps us keep telling the truth that so many are afraid to share. It was a quiet Saturday morning in our Ohio neighborhood. The kind where birds chirp like they've got something to prove and kids ride bikes up and down the sidewalk without a care in the world. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my usual black coffee, flipping through an old sports magazine I'd already read twice. Jessica was out with Sophie, taking her to ballet practice. I remember thinking how lucky I was. A wife who loved our daughter, a steady job that let me work from home, and a life that, at least from the outside, looked like a dream. Then came the knock. 3 short taps. I figured it was a neighbor asking for a tool or maybe a package left at the wrong door. So I didn't think twice. I opened it and that's when my life split in two. There he stood. A man about my age, maybe a few years younger. Clean-shaven, wearing a dark green hoodie and jeans. He looked nervous. His eyes were red like he hadn't slept in days. Hi, he said, swallowing hard. Is Jessica here? I blinked. My wife's name rolled off his tongue like it meant something more than casual. Who are you? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. He hesitated. My name's Michael. I'm sorry to come like this, but I needed to know the truth. Something in my gut shifted. The truth about what? He looked down at his hands, then back at me. She said she was leaving you. She said she filed for divorce 2 months ago. I didn't believe her anymore. My ears started ringing. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. What are you talking about? He sighed, rubbing his hands together like he needed to warm them up. We've been seeing each other for 1.5 years. She told me you two were done. That you were just co-parenting for your daughter. I didn't say anything. My heart was slamming against my chest so hard I could barely breathe. She even showed me pictures of your daughter. Told me she was mine. That's when everything around me started spinning. Jessica and I had never separated. We were still sleeping in the same bed. We'd just taken a family trip to Florida last month. She smiled at me like I was her world, and I believed it. Michael's voice shook. I loved her, man. I really thought we had something. But when she stopped replying to my texts last week, I knew something was wrong. I sat down on the porch step, feeling my legs give out. How did you find me? She gave me your address months ago, said it was temporary until you sold the house. I never came by, but something in me snapped this morning. I needed answers. I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes weren't angry. They were broken. And that's when it hit me, we were both victims. Jessica had been living a double life. Just then, I heard the car pull into the driveway. Sophie's voice rang out as she skipped toward the porch. Daddy! I stood up fast, brushing my hands over my face to hide the storm brewing behind my eyes. Jessica stepped out of the car, her eyes locking with Michael's. She froze. Sophie ran past both of them, heading inside. Michael, Jessica whispered. He laughed bitterly. So, you weren't going to tell him? I turned to her slowly. You need to come inside. Now. Michael looked at me. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean for it to come out like this. But you deserve to know. And he walked away. Jessica didn't move. She stood there like a ghost. I held the door open. She walked past me without a word. The silence in our house that day felt like a scream. I shut the door behind her slowly. The sound of it closing felt like a wall being built between the life I thought I had and the one I was suddenly living in. Jessica stood in the middle of the kitchen, hands clenched at her sides, not saying a word. I didn't even know where to start. My chest was tight, my mind racing. Our daughter was upstairs playing like nothing had changed, while our whole marriage was crashing downstairs. I pointed at the table. Sit. She didn't argue. She sat down in the same chair where I'd been sipping coffee less than an hour ago. That version of me was gone now, replaced by a man who didn't recognize the woman across from him. How long? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Jessica hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said. A little over a year. I nodded slowly, staring at the grain in the wooden table so I wouldn't lose it. A year, while living in this house with me, raising our daughter together. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't supposed to go that far. At first, it was just, "Don't," I said sharply, raising a hand. "Don't give me the 'it just happened' excuse." She looked down. "I need the truth," I said. "All of it. I'm not going to yell. But you owe me that." She nodded. "It started online," she said, voice shaking. "Some stupid message on a photography forum. He was charming, funny, felt harmless at first. Just someone to talk to while you were working long hours and Sophie was in preschool. That hit hard. I had taken on extra shifts and side projects to help us get out of debt after her medical scare 2 years ago. And while I was breaking my back, she was falling in love with someone else. We started texting. Then video calls," she continued. "It felt like I had a secret escape. I didn't plan to meet him. But one day he flew in and I didn't stop it." My stomach turned. "How many times?" I asked. "3 times in person," she whispered. "Once in a hotel. Once when you were away on business. And once in this house." I slammed my fist on the table. The sound echoed. In her home. With her daughter sleeping down the hall. She flinched but didn't defend herself. The weight of that betrayal crushed every part of me. He said Sophie might be his. What the hell is that?" She looked at me broken. "She's yours, Daniel." "I swear it. I was already pregnant when it started." "You sure?" I asked, my voice cold. She nodded. "Yes." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The air in the room felt toxic. Then she said something that nearly knocked the breath out of me. "I was going to leave." I looked up. "What?" "I had the papers. I was ready. But then I watched you and Sophie baking cookies in the kitchen one night, laughing and dancing around like the world was perfect. And I couldn't do it." "So you kept both lives?" I asked. "You let him think you were leaving me, told him my daughter was his, and smiled at me every day like everything was normal?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't want to lose either of you." I stood up. "You already lost me, Jess." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. But I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. Not this time. That night, I slept on the couch. I stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how I missed the signs. How someone could look you in the eye every day and still keep such a massive secret. I kept seeing his face, Michael. The way he stood at the door, broken and blindsided, just like me. We were 2 strangers living 2 different versions of the same lie. I didn't know what came next. But I knew one thing for sure: everything had changed. There's something strange about waking up in a house that suddenly feels like it doesn't belong to you anymore. The morning after Jessica confessed everything, I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling, hearing her footsteps upstairs. Every sound felt louder. The creak of the stairs, the opening of a cabinet, the quiet sound of Sophie humming to herself. The world kept moving, but mine had stopped. I didn't talk to Jessica that morning. I didn't even look at her. I took Sophie to daycare and drove straight to my best friend Marcus's place. He opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "What happened, man?" I sat on his worn leather couch and told him everything: Michael showing up at the door, Jessica's confession, the affair, the doubt about Sophie's paternity. Marcus didn't interrupt. He just sat there, hands clasped, jaw tight. When I was done, he leaned forward and said, "You need to get a paternity test. Not because you doubt your daughter, but because your peace of mind matters." I nodded. I already knew he was right. I just didn't want to admit how deep this wound was going to go. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Not to file for divorce yet, but to ask questions. I needed to know my rights. I needed time to think. But time wasn't something I'd get much of. Because 2 days later, Michael came back. Only this time, he didn't come to our front door. He went public. It started with a post. He uploaded a long, emotional message on Facebook with a photo of Jessica and Sophie, faces blurred out but still recognizable to anyone who knew us. He explained how he'd been in a relationship with a married woman for over a year. How she promised to leave her husband. How she told him the child was his. He didn't name her, but he didn't have to. People started connecting dots fast. Then came the messages. The texts. The emails. Friends. Family. Coworkers. Some were angry. Others were shocked. Many were just confused. My phone didn't stop buzzing. "Dan, is this true? I thought you." My phone didn't stop buzzing. "Dan, is this true? I thought you and Jess were solid. What happened?" I saw the post. I'm so sorry, man. Are you okay? What about Sophie? I didn't respond to most of them. What could I say? That I felt like a fool? That my life had split into before and after in a matter of days? Jessica was crushed when she found out about the post. She tried to take it down, begged Michael to delete it. But the damage was done. Screenshots were already circling. Gossip was moving faster than we could keep up with. Even people from my job were talking. People I barely spoke to before were suddenly concerned or curious. When I finally confronted her again, it wasn't yelling. I didn't have the strength. I just want to know, I said, what you were thinking. What was this? Jessica looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No makeup. Hair tied back. Eyes red. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, trembling slightly as she tried to speak. I was lonely, she whispered. You were working late, always tired, always distracted. And Michael, he listened. I held up my hand. Don't blame me for your choices. I'm not, she said quickly. I swear, I'm not. I was selfish. I thought I could handle it. That I could walk away when it got too far. But I didn't. I got tangled up. And Sophie? I asked, my voice tight. Is she his? Jessica looked me dead in the eyes. I don't know. That night, I took Sophie to Marcus's place. Not because I didn't want her around Jessica, but because I needed space to breathe. To think. I watched my little girl sleep on a makeshift bed, her tiny arms wrapped around her favorite plush bunny. My chest ached. The idea that she might not be mine biologically ripped through me. But deep down, I knew this. She was my daughter in every way that counted. Still, the test had to happen. For closure. For truth. For the next step. Jessica and I took Sophie to a private clinic 2 days later. The nurse was kind, gentle, and didn't ask questions. Just did her job. They told us we'd have to wait up to a week. A week of hell. I returned to work. Avoided eye contact. Said as little as possible. At home, Jessica and I barely spoke. When we did, it was about logistics. Schedules. Groceries. Sophie. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Then the results came in. I opened the email alone. Jessica waited in the other room. My hand shook as I scrolled. Probability of paternity, 0%. The world stopped. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I got up, walked to the living room. Jessica saw my face, stood up slowly, clutching the couch cushion like it could save her. She's not mine, I said, my voice flat. Not biologically. Jessica collapsed into a sob, falling to her knees. I stood there, frozen, until I turned and left the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just went into the guest room, shut the door behind me, and let the truth settle in. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Dan, is this true? I thought you and Jess were solid. What happened? I saw the post. I'm so sorry, man. Are you okay? What about Sophie? I didn't respond to most of them. What could I say? That I felt like a fool? That my life had split into before and after in a matter of days? Jessica was crushed when she found out about the post. She tried to take it down, begged Michael to delete it. But the damage was done. Screenshots were already circling. Gossip was moving faster than we could keep up with. Even people from my job were talking. People I barely spoke to before were suddenly concerned or curious. When I finally confronted her again, it wasn't yelling. I didn't have the strength. I just want to know, I said, what you were thinking. What was this? Jessica looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No makeup. Hair tied back. Eyes red. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, trembling slightly as she tried to speak. I was lonely, she whispered. You were working late, always tired, always distracted. And Michael, he listened. I held up my hand. Don't blame me for your choices. I'm not, she said quickly. I swear, I'm not. I was selfish. I thought I could handle it. That I could walk away when it got too far. But I didn't. I got tangled up. And Sophie? I asked, my voice tight. Is she his? Jessica looked me dead in the eyes. I don't know. That night, I took Sophie to Marcus's place. Not because I didn't want her around Jessica, but because I needed space to breathe. To think. I watched my little girl sleep on a makeshift bed, her tiny arms wrapped around her favorite plush bunny. My chest ached. The idea that she might not be mine biologically ripped through me. But deep down, I knew this. She was my daughter in every way that counted. Still, the test had to happen. For closure. For truth. For the next step. Jessica and I took Sophie to a private clinic 2 days later. The nurse was kind, gentle, and didn't ask questions. Just did her job. They told us we'd have to wait up to a week. A week of hell. I returned to work. Avoided eye contact. Said as little as possible. At home, Jessica and I barely spoke. When we did, it was about logistics. Schedules. Groceries. Sophie. The silence between us was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Then the results came in. I opened the email alone. Jessica waited in the other room. My hand shook as I scrolled. Probability of paternity, 0%. The world stopped. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Then I got up, walked to the living room. Jessica saw my face, stood up slowly, clutching the couch cushion like it could save her. "She's not mine," I said, my voice flat. "Not biologically." Jessica collapsed into a sob, falling to her knees. I stood there, frozen, until I turned and left the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just went into the guest room, shut the door behind me, and let the truth settle in. I didn't sleep that night. The silence in the guest room was too loud. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophie's face, heard her laugh, remembered the first time I held her in my arms. The truth said she wasn't mine, but my heart refused to believe it. How do you unlove a child you raised? At sunrise, I got up, made coffee, and stared out the window. Jessica was already in the kitchen. Her eyes were swollen, red, like she hadn't slept either. We didn't speak. Not until Sophie came into the room in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, bunny in hand. "Daddy?" I turned. My heart cracked. "Yeah, baby? Can we go get pancakes today?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course we can." That Saturday, we went to her favorite diner. Jessica came too. We sat like a broken little family at a corner booth, pretending things weren't falling apart. Sophie didn't know any better. She was laughing, coloring on the kids' menu, dipping her pancakes in syrup like nothing had changed. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about DNA. It was about love, about time, about being there. But still, something inside me had shifted. A fracture that couldn't be patched with pancakes. Later that day, Jessica asked if we could talk. We sat outside on the porch. It was cloudy, a soft wind in the air. She didn't wear makeup. Didn't try to hide. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "I don't even expect you to stay. I need you to know I never stopped loving you. Even when I did the worst thing imaginable." I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the swing in the yard, the one I built for Sophie last summer. "You broke something in me," I finally said. "And the thing is, I don't even think it's the cheating that hurts the most." Jessica looked up. "Then what?" "It's that I spent years trusting you. Building this life. Loving a daughter I thought was ours. And now every memory feels poisoned." She nodded, tears running down her cheeks. "I'll leave," she said. "If that's what you want." I stood up. "Not yet." That night, I wrote a letter. To myself. A way to make sense of the storm. "Dear Dan, you didn't fail. You loved fully. You were present, patient, committed. What happened wasn't your fault. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to let go. But it's also okay to fight for what you believe in if that's still in your heart. You decide what comes next. No one else." A week passed. Jessica stayed in the house. But we were more like roommates than spouses. I needed space, time. Sophie was the only glue still holding anything together. Then came the hardest decision I'd ever had to make. One Sunday morning, I asked Jessica to meet me at the park, just the two of us. I told Marcus to take Sophie for a few hours. We sat on the same bench where we used to take walks when we were dating. "I talked to a lawyer," I said. Jessica's face dropped. "So that's it?" "I need clarity," I said. "Not for revenge. Not out of anger. But because I can't live in limbo anymore." "I understand," she whispered. "Will I get to see her?" I looked at her. "Of course you will. I'd never take Sophie away from you." Tears welled in her eyes again. "Even after everything?" I nodded slowly. "Because despite it all, she still needs her mom." Then I stood up, looked into the sky, and said something I never imagined I'd say. "I'm filing for divorce." I woke up in my new apartment to the sound of rain against the window. It had been 3 months since I filed for divorce. 3 months since I said goodbye. We agreed on shared custody. I had her Wednesdays and every other weekend. The first time she came to my new place, she looked around, confused. "Where's Mommy?" "She's at her place, sweetheart. This is Daddy's new home." She frowned. "But I want us all together." I knelt in front of her, pulled her close. "I know, baby. I want that too. But sometimes grown-ups have to live in different houses to be better parents. Do you still love Mommy?" That question hit me like a truck. I paused, choosing my words. "I'll always care about Mommy. And I'll always love you. That will never change." She nodded slowly, hugging me tight. "Okay." Life became a series of routines. Work, groceries, calls with my parents, parenting on rotation. At night, I'd sit on the couch with a beer, thinking about what went wrong, what I missed, and who I was becoming. One evening, I got a message from Marcus. I know you hate me, but I'm leaving town. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. I stared at the screen for a long time. I never replied. Some things don't need words. Some people don't deserve them. Jessica and I were civil. Cold, but civil. We spoke only about Sophie. Drop-offs and pickups. School meetings and weekend plans. She looked tired, like someone who knew she'd broken something she could never fix. Once, after Sophie's dance recital, we found ourselves walking to our cars at the same time. Jessica stopped, turned to me. Do you hate me? I looked at her, rain beginning to fall again like it always did in moments that mattered. I don't hate you, I said. I just don't know who you are anymore. She nodded like she'd been waiting for that answer. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know. Then we went our separate ways. The following weekend I took Sophie to the beach. Just her and me. She built sandcastles. I watched the waves. And somewhere between the laughter and the wind I felt something I hadn't in a long time, peace. Not the kind that erases the pain, but the kind that accepts it. I'd lost my marriage. I'd lost the version of my life I trusted. But I hadn't lost myself. I still had love to give. And a daughter who saw me as her hero. The truth is, infidelity doesn't just break hearts, it changes the shape of your world. It tests every part of who you are. But if you're lucky, or maybe just strong enough, you find your footing again. You rebuild. You choose yourself. To anyone out there walking through betrayal, I'll say this. You are not what they did to you. You are who you become after. And as for me, I became someone who refused to stay broken. Someone who turned pain into purpose. Someone who walked out of the fire and didn't look back. That's the ending.